I'm going to assume that like a lot of other kids growing up in the 90s, their journey with Beetlejuice didn't begin with the movie. And it probably started with the Saturday morning cartoon of the same name, then eventually the actual movie after getting curious about the real Beetlejuice. And you know what, I can admit, I was a very squeamish kid when it came to spooky imagery. So going from a cute tap dancing spider to, well, this. It took a couple of sittings for me to finally watch all of the original movie. And I'm happy I got through it eventually, because going back and watching other Tim Burton movies, I could see a lot of the DNA from Beetlejuice appearing in some other movies here and there. But finally in the year 2024, Tim Burton, along with a good chunk of the original cast, has returned for a sequel to this beloved goth classic, leaving a lot of people to wonder, was it worth the wait? Well hey, what's good internet? It's been a while, but I am back for one more review. Pretty belated review at this point. I am Isaac, aka DatChickenWang, as part of the ChickenWang gang, and I'm here to give you my honest thoughts and opinions on Beetlejuice Beetlejuice.
The juice is loose.
It's been about 36 years since we last saw the Dietz family, but due to the recent death of Lydia's father Charles, her stepmother Delia, and Lydia's daughter Astrid returned to the familiar home from all those years ago where they first met the Maitland family. However, it's quite clear early on that the passage of time just hasn't been great for everyone since the first movie. Lydia now hosts a paranormal reality TV show, allowing her to put her special gifts to good use, but at the same time she's still being haunted by visions of Beetlejuice. This is actually something she's been hiding from her current boyfriend, Rory, who also has a little something that he's hiding of his own. However, that's not going to stop him from proposing to Lydia during the post-funeral wake in front of everyone at the Dietz home, causing Astrid to ride off into town on her bike, where an accident occurs, causing her to meet a local boy named Jeremy. But now that we got the human characters out the way, we get to return to the real star of the show, the neo-gothic afterlife that was envisioned in the first movie, and further expanded upon in this movie. But before we're introduced to the ghost at the most, we're first introduced to Dolores, Beetlejuice's ex-wife, and after literally pulling herself together during her introduction, we're introduced to the concept of her being a soul-sucking ghost, meaning no more soul, no more afterlife, so she can effectively kill what is already dead, and she immediately sets her sights on Beetlejuice. And with absolutely no explanation between the first movie and this one, we see Beetlejuice has somehow become upper management in the afterlife, and he commands a staff of shrunken head assistants, with Bob being his right-hand man. How he came to do this after having his own head shrunk at the end of the previous movie, we don't know, we don't ask. As it comes to his attention that his ex-wife is back and now after him, he attempts to reach out to Lydia for help, who will also be needing his help later on in the movie too. And that's kind of my first point of frustration with this movie. It's like, there are some good plot points or subplots that they have, but before they really get room to breathe, they're just gone. They're done with and over. If anything, I could equate it to the whole Toy Story meme of, I don't want to play with you anymore, with Tim Burton being Andy in this case. I do, however, gotta give credit that there was a decent subplot they set up early on with Astrid and her father, because Lydia has the ability to see ghosts. Astrid thinks she has the ability to see ghosts as well, but if that's the case, why has she not seen her father, who they presume has passed away? We don't know where this story goes, but as we get further into the movie, it starts to bear fruit, but then it's handled very sloppily, oh my goodness. Like, maybe it's a weird thing to say about a movie, but so much of the runtime on this movie just feels like straight up filler. Some of it still hits, which saves the movie most of the time, but after having sat on this movie for over a week now, it would be difficult for me to actually explain the main plot of the movie in one simple sentence. And if we're doing more comparisons to the first Beetlejuice movie, I gotta mention the lack of heart that this movie has compared to the first. Lydia's thing with her boyfriend is played off as a comedy, Astrid has her own thing going, which is very quickly resolved before we could really get invested in it. Delia is dealing with her grief, but again it's all played out for laughs. Beetlejuice is here to bring the comedic chaos as we'd all expect, and we do expand on his character some more in here, even going so far as to give him something resembling an origin story. So the origin story concept is okay, but Beetlejuice is too much of a prankster, similar to the Joker, who has a whole bunch of different origin stories, so I don't trust this to be Beetlejuice's definitive origin story, especially since it's played off as a gag at the end, so who knows. Don't get me wrong though, It's cool that the movie wants to be entertaining and keep the laughs coming one after the other, but by the time the movie was over, I never really felt like I had any investment in any characters because the journey we went on with them was just really hollow in comparison to what the Maitlands went through in the first. I will say though, this movie does try to have a heartwarming scene about 2/3 of the way into the movie, but like the subplots, it's over and done with so fast and then whoop, back to the jokes. One other thing this movie does, which is also another weak point, is opposite of having subplots that end way too quickly, is we have parts that linger on for way too long and rely heavily on callbacks from the first movie. I mean, it's even shown in the trailers that some things are obvious callbacks to the first movie. We even have multiple needle drop moments in this movie where we might get to do a little song and dance number. The first needle drop that is a direct callback to the first movie is the Banana Boat song. And there was a short one that was actually very funny involving Beetlejuice, but there is also one very long needle drop that kind of overstayed its welcome. And without giving too much away, the lead up to the climax of this movie was so similar to the first that I honestly felt stupid for not realizing they were going to go that route. Because I mean, it was staring me in the eyes for like a couple of minutes before it actually happened. I didn't think they were going to do it because it would have been too obvious, but nope. It's almost directly ripped from the first Beetlejuice. It was crazy to see, but... So given all my gripes I just threw out there about the plot and the lack of heart, I still found myself overall enjoying this movie, and I think that is mostly due to the main cast of the movie and them just pulling all their weight. Winona Ryder is back to form as Lydia, being the lovable goth mommy we all knew she'd grow up to be. Jenna Ortega is typecast as playing Jenna Ortega, but I can't even fault her for that because she's very animated and fun to watch on screen, with this movie even giving her an opportunity to dust off those dance shoes one more time to channel some strong Wednesday vibes. However, out of all the human characters, Catherine O'Hara by far completely stole the show whenever she was in a scene. She brought all that sarcastic dry wit back with her and cranked it up even more for this movie, going so far as to let some of her facial expressions even do the talking. Even Willem Dafoe, who plays a ghost that was a former actor who seems to have been typecast as the badass cop on some Clint Eastwood energy, is consistently great whenever he's on screen. And of course, Michael Keaton absolutely carries this movie on his shoulders as Beetlejuice. After all these years since the first movie, it's been like Keaton hasn't missed a single beat, and is surprisingly energetic in his performance as Beetlejuice despite him getting up there in age. I want to say his performance in Beetlejuice here is probably better than it was in the first movie, but that's just my opinion. And also, this movie is just fun to look at. The old Dietz home looks great all these years later. There are very well done animated sequences in the movie that pop up now and then. We have a return to some practical effects that look great, and most of the denizens of the afterlife all have their little things about them that make it perfectly clear how they ended up there in the first place. Although some of the makeup or props on some of the people in the afterlife look a little goofy, but it still remains fun just to watch them go about their lives in the afterlife. And oh boy, so thrilled to see the return of the stop-motion sandworms in this movie. I miss them so much, especially from the cartoon era. Oh man, I almost forgot about the Soul Train gag too. That's part of the afterlife. Like, really? Really, Tim Burton? Use that gag like 3 times in this movie? Like, I'm sure you thought this was the funniest thing, but man, you ain't beating those racism allegations anytime soon pulling a move like that. Though something that kind of stood out and struck me as strange was they didn't write out Jeffrey Jones's character of Charles Dietz. Instead, they tried to include him in the movie as much as they could without actually having the actor there. Feels like it would have been easier to just recast him or write him out entirely, instead of trying to tiptoe around his inclusion, but guessing Tim Burton still wanted to keep his character around despite his troubled past. I mean, hey, you can look that stuff up yourself if you want. Well, it's about time to wrap this up. And in concluding, I gotta say Beetlejuice Beetlejuice wasn't a bad time at the theater. This movie does not feel focused very well, especially compared to the first. It feels like there are probably 3 to 5 different movies happening in this one alone. But it was fun to come back and visit the Dietz family, hang out with Beetlejuice, just watch Michael Keaton chew up scenery, and I just love to see the afterlife through Tim Burton's eyes. It's a visual feast for me. And some things like the ending kind of left me baffled, and through all the other nitpicks I have, I hopefully just explained what I could because, yeah, I enjoyed it, but I am very much aware of its shortcomings. So If you want to see this in theater, go ahead, but you are not missing anything if you choose to just catch it on streaming further on down the line. So with that, I'm going to give Beetlejuice Beetlejuice 6 out of 11 chicken wings. It sits somewhere slightly above the middle, but your mileage may vary. If you made it this far into the review, thank you so much for sticking around. It means the world to me that you would take the time to listen to my opinions about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. And hopefully if you enjoyed it, I earned a like or a subscribe from you. No pressure at all. And hey, I'll see you all for the next one. Yo, yo.